This year's poppy appeal is the 97th. The first was in 1921, where 9 million silk poppies were sold in one day, the 11th of the 11th, 1921, raising £106,000. This year's poppy appeal will see 41 million poppies sold, 40,000 volunteers will be helping, and just under £50 million will be generated from poppy sales. Although the poppy appeal only lasts for 3 weeks, it's a 12-month long operation with lots going on behind the scenes for the other 49 weeks. We have the luxury here in Hatfield of staging the poppy appeal launch in the Galleria shopping centre. This negates any inclement weather. Many of the people involved in the poppy appeal, behind the scenes and at the launch, have taken part in making the 11th of November a very emotional day.
When we were thinking about the format for the centenary of the Armistice in Hatfield, we wanted to make sure that the essential bits reflected what happens every year in Hatfield. And every year we start with the Commonwealth Cemetery, which is a small cemetery on the edge of Hatfield Park. And historically, we've gathered early in the morning at that cemetery. So we did that as the first event of the centenary commemoration. I always think that's rather a moving ceremony, and it was conducted with his usual style by Canon Darren Collins, our rector.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, or the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
It was rather a rainy morning. The scene then moved to a parade which started further north up the A1000, across the traffic lights, and we all formed up, all the voluntary organisations, the veterans, the church, and we marched to the Hatfield Cenotaph.
We're now hitting record numbers every year. It says a lot about, the town we're living in. There's lots of good people living in Hatfield, and they're all coming out for the reason why we're all still here today.
I myself don't go every year because, as High Steward of Harford, every other year I found myself at Harford instead. But I think, although it was Harford's year this year, I felt that I had to be at Hatfield, obviously, for this very special occasion. I feel very privileged to be able to be the first person to lay the wreath at the cenotaph as the representative of the Lord Lieutenant and as a Deputy Lieutenant of the county, and therefore ultimately on behalf of the Queen.
Town Mayor, Councillor Jack Nelson, and Deputy Borough Mayor, Councillor Roger Tripp. Leader of the Town Council, Councillor Lenny Brandon. Councillor Duncan Burke, on behalf of the Welling Hatfield Borough Council. The Royal British Legion Women's Section. Representatives from the Armed Forces and Veterans. Professor Quinton McCullough, on behalf of the University of Hertfordshire. A posy is laid for the animals of war. Representatives from the cadets. Representatives from the emergency services. Mr. Robert Larkin, a representative on behalf of the Road Surgeon. The Jimmy Mac Daycare Centre and other care homes. In a moment, the colour passes will form up, and our procession will continue through the main gates of Hatfield House, up to the north front of the Hatfield House, for a recreation of the service of Thanksgiving that was held there 100 years ago today. All are welcome to attend.
When you go home, tell them of us and say, for your tomorrow, we gave our today.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's wonderful to see so many people here this morning. We know that the First World War changed everything. It destroyed the old European order, bringing down empire. It ushered in the economic dominance of the United States. It also almost fatally weakened our own country. It effected unprecedented social change, particularly for women. And of course, it stimulated extraordinarily rapid technological advances. Tragically, it led directly to a conflict that killed even more people, the Second World War.
I'm very proud to have been there, because I never had anything like that before. It was unexpected, and but I was very proud to have served or helped.
And we were fortunate to have with us for the service Bishop Stephen Venner, who a former chaplain to the forces, who was going to address us during the course of that ceremony.
I leave you with Two very brief thoughts. One is that if our world is going to become the sort of world that the men and women died for in the First World War, a world of peace, a world of harmony, some of it will be done by politicians and statesmen. Most of it will be done by you and me, working in our societies to build the sort of world that we want it to be. And the second is that if you'd asked most of the people who went and fought, and many of them died in those trenches of the First World War, why they did it, they would say, we did it for our mates. I'm a bishop, and so I put it slightly differently, and say that if we are not motivated by love for each other and for God, then none of this is going to happen. So let's pray that this wonderful centenary is the beginning of another reformation, another resurgence as we transform our society into the sort of world we all want it to be. Amen.
After the service, it would have been peculiar if everybody had just dispersed. I think we wanted to reflect on the day, have the opportunity to talk to each other. And so we laid on refreshments in the old riding school in the park. And we were very lucky that there had been a rather magnificent exhibition put together by people throughout Hertfordshire, but led by the Hertford Museum, which is a remarkable institution. I'm fortunate enough to be the patron of it, and it's had a remarkable revival over the last few years. And of course they were entirely appropriate because they are the custodians of the records of the Hertfordshire and Bedfordshire Regiment as it became. You will remember that there was a terrible moment in 1917 when the Hertfordshire Regiment was pretty nearly wiped out during an attack. There was a very moving ceremony in which a memorial was unveiled last year on the site of the attack in northern France. So that exhibition was put together specially for the centenary and was the context of, and when we went for our refreshments, people were able to not only swig back their coffee, but were able to look at the clear evidence of what Hertfordshire and Hatfield in particular had endured during the war.
The final event of the Hatfield centenary was the lighting of the beacon.
And we had a wonderful performance from a bunch of women singers who come and help us out at the battle proms every year at Hatfield, and they produced a lot of mid-20th century songs to remind us of what followed.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's my very pleasant duty to welcome everybody here this evening for the final ceremony of this 100th anniversary of the Armistice on the 11th of November 1918. And it's a wonderful coincidence, is it not, that this year's centenary falls exactly on the 11th of November. It is surely right that we should never forget the courage, the patriotism, and the sacrifice of those who fought, those who died, those who were maimed, and those whose lives were forever changed in that monumental conflict of total war. We know that there were 180 men of Hatfield, then a small town in Hertfordshire, rather than the bigger town we live in today, who were killed in that conflict. My own family, Prime Minister Salisbury, lost 5 of his grandsons during that conflict, and many other families lost at least as many.
There was, I think, this very remarkable idea that the air cadets, of whom I have the honour to be the president, should read out the list of the fallen in St. Etheldreda's church, which they did with great dignity and aplomb.
Private E.W. Adams, 1st Hertfordshire Regiment.
Private A.G. Smith, Royal Garrisons Artillery.
Private H.E. Freeman, 7th Bedfordshire Regiment.
Private C.G. Stockbridge, Hertfordshire Regiment.
Corporal W. Speller, Machine Gun Corps.
Private C. Wren, 2nd Bedfordshire Regiment.
2nd Lieutenant G.E. Cecil, Grenadier Guards. Captain J.A. Gascoyne-Cecil, Royal Cross Army Field Artillery.
Lieutenant R.E. Gascoyne-Cecil, 4th Bedfordshire Regiment. Lieutenant R.W. Gascoyne-Cecil, Royal Horse Artillery.
It was right that I had the privilege to light the beacon, but that it seemed to me important that other descendants of people who had been killed during the war should take part, to make clear this was a community occasion. And we did have other descendants who lit the pyre simultaneously. And I think it was also symbolic that Barry Davies, a Chelsea pensioner, an organisation with which I have the honour to be much connected, was able to come in his splendid scarlet uniform to make the point that the veterans were the people who really mattered.
Anyway, it's lovely to see you, and thank you for coming. It's a great uniform for this place this evening, isn't it? It's you, but it's wonderful. Thank you. Do you want to come and help us light the fire? I think you should. Yes!
Oh, you who sleep in Flanders fields, sleep sweet to rising you. We caught the torch you threw, and holding high we keep the faith with all who died. We cherish too the poppy red that grows in fields where valour led. It seemed to signal to the skies that blood of heroes never dies. But lends a lustre to the red of the flowers that blooms above the dead in Flanders fields. And now the torch and poppy red, we wear it in honour of our dead.
We say we will remember them.
Fear not that ye have died for naught, will teach the lessons that ye wrought. In Flanders fields. remember them.